Welcome to Puzzle with Emilia. That would be me, and this would be Billy. I don't know if it shows in the camera, let me check. Oh, that's so funny. Welcome to Puzzle with Emilia. That would be me, and today we're gonna talk about 3 mental mistakes that I would love you to avoid as a speed puzzler. And as the word mistake might be a little bit misleading, it was the best word I could find, but the main topic is going to be about how to keep your head in the game. Because if your head is not in the game, you're not gonna get there. It doesn't matter if you're a puzzler who just started and doing puzzles in 2 hours, or you're already reaching the, for example, 45 minutes mark for 500-piece puzzles. If your head is not there, you're never gonna reach your own full potential as a speed puzzler. And also science supports the fact that the difference between a good athlete and great athlete is pretty much here. All right, number 1. And this is like a huge bouquet of red flags to me. And that is talking down to yourself. Now, obviously this and the points coming after this are something that we all do more or less. So there's obviously things that you can always improve, do better, and sometimes this can be also like literally a problem that needs to be fixed. And when it's an actual problem, we also know that negative self-talk is actually one of the main causes for underperformance. And if it's in a level that you're literally talking down to yourself before, for example, a competition, it almost like comes very easily like self-fulfilling prophecy. And this has been obviously also researched, so it's a real thing that if you talk down to yourself, that is going to affect your performance in a negative way. So one tip I would give for this, that, and I know this is gonna sound very cliche, but like think about like, okay, I'm saying this to myself, would I say to this somebody else? Because quite often the answer is no. Even when you're like, okay, but I can say this to myself because this is true. But once again, would you say it to other person? Probably not, because even if it's true, it's not helping them in any way, shape or form. I seriously need to stop doing this with my hand. I can't stand myself. Oh my God. Ugh. But obviously, you know, all performance and speed puzzling aside, in the end, why this actually matters and is important is because of your well-being. Literally breaks my heart every time I see somebody doing this. And it's always the people who are like the most nicest to others. And that's actually, yes, I'm gonna talk about myself now just for a moment. But for example, I feel like sometimes a lot of people think that I'm talking down to myself. I actually don't. I have pretty faulty and harsh language, but that applies to no matter who I'm talking to, including myself. So that's a little bit different. So you also need to go kind of like catch. I'm very neutral with the negative words. For example, failure to me is like almost like a positive word. So almost like the same thing. I used to work with a lot of US startups. And I feel like in that scene, it's like a thing that if you haven't bankrupted a business before, you're never considered as a real business person. So for example, bankruptcy and failure is like, ooh, that means you're gonna be very successful someday. But yeah, so that's a little bit different. But yeah, let's go to the number 2. And the number 2 would be making excuses. I'm gonna make a little bit fun about this topic. Don't take me too seriously. And this is once again something that we all do, more or less. But if you catch yourself doing this quite often in the examples I'm gonna give you soon, then maybe reconsider if you can do something about it. So one thing is, for example, so we're in the world and, you know, in the dome, there's a little bit, not everybody's a fan of the lighting there. So sometimes we give this kind of like excuse that, you know, I would have been faster if the lighting was better, or I didn't make it to the next round because if the lights would have been better, I would have been faster. Which is true. A lot of excuses are actually 100% true. But then it's like this person goes, they go back home and the whole year they practice with their perfect optimized lightning, and then they come back next year and they once again saying, oh yeah, I would have been faster, but the light was not good. And I'm like, so what did you expect? You know you don't do that well in the bad lighting, and then you go back home and you practice with the perfect lights all the time. How does that make any sense to anybody? Or the classic of, you know what, I had so much trouble with the space because the table was so small. I'm much faster with like other type of tables and stuff. And then they go back and then they don't practice with the smaller space. So it's kind of like, yeah, that is officially an excuse. Almost like self-sabotaging. It's like, you know this is an issue. It's under your control. You could actually practice it. And then you don't. And then you repeat. That's the thing. You go and repeat the thing. And once again, go and say, oh, but it's because of this. It's like back in the day when I was playing in other sports in the national team. I always complained that, oh, that's my dog. You can't see it, but he's here with me. He's making funny sounds. But yeah, when I was playing in the national team, I really sucked of throwing the disc when it was like a windy weather. And I always said, you know, we would have won if it wasn't that windy. But it's like, I also pretty much never, ever went to do my throwing practices outside when it was bad weather, windy. So no wonder why did that happen. And also we always say that, okay, yeah, but I slept bad, or we have an online competition, I have a barking dog and my kids were screaming in the sun. Like, all this might be true, but also like we forget very easily that other people have these same problems as well, and they're probably having problems that you don't have. We don't really consider that, okay, this other person has also, maybe they slept bad, maybe they got bad news yesterday, maybe they're having some health issues. We never consider this. We're always like, okay, but I slept bad, so I would have been faster than the one person before me if I would have slept better. But it's also like, I'm sure that person thinks exactly the same of the person before them, if that makes sense. So it's like, if it's something that you can control, for example, I'm not good at with the bad lights, then practice for that. And then if it's not in your control, like, well, I don't know what that would be. Well, for example, speculating what others have or don't have. So then you should just let it go and focus on those that you can actually control and affect on, and stop doing the excuses. Even if you think that, even if it's true, just don't go and say it out loud to yourself or others. I mean, and once again, we all do this, but we could do better. Okay, I have to draw this perfect, fantastic thing. I'm so artistic for this. And number 3, which would be letting your feelings affect negatively on your performance. So it's actually very normal, for example, before a competition, to feel very, for example, anxious, nervous, all this kind of like what people, I think, in generally consider negative feelings. So it's completely normal. I like to think that when I'm feeling nervous, actually I really feel like I'm throwing up usually before a competition, but I like to also think that, okay, this is just because this is important to me. So this is like a normal reaction. The problem, because we cannot really affect our feelings. They come and go. There's nothing we can do about them. The only thing we can make sure that we don't react to our own feelings, and we don't let them affect our thoughts or our actions. This is kind of like called like a cognitive triangle. So it quite often happens that our feelings affect our actions and thoughts, our thoughts are affecting actions and feelings, and so on. The number 1 I said earlier, we talked about talking down to yourself, is more like a thought, and quite often becomes a major problem when you let it affect your feelings and actions. Whereas here, when we're talking about feelings, for example, feeling anxious, that you start thinking like, oh my God, I'm gonna fail, I'm gonna blah, blah, blah. And then that's gonna start affecting your actions. So what I'm trying to say here, you can have these feelings, don't try to fight them. They will come and go anyway, but just try not to react to them. I like to sometimes think, and I use this also in other aspects of life, that if I get negative feelings, I try to think that, okay, they're like renting a space in my brain, and I'm just gonna have their happily living there for a while, and then they will pack their bags and skedaddle. This is really hard sometimes, especially if we have very strong feelings or emotions. But those are perfectly normal. So the key thing is just kind of like not react to our own feelings. And this is something I always like talk about in my coaching. Actually, we have a couple even sessions related to this. We had one before Worlds where we were talking about kind of like also mental preparations, and Daniel was also sharing their his experience with negative feelings. And then we actually this December we had like a full session related to kind of like mental tips and tricks. A lot of times it's like, obviously we're all humans, so it's like you can have all good, but you can always do better. And then there is obviously the situation sometimes that something is actually a problem. I do want to just shortly clarify here that I'm talking, for example, anxiety as a feeling. Anxiety can be also used as a word for medical problems. Those are obviously two different things. And for example, in my coaching, I'm more focused on the mental tips and kind of like general things that this is how you can improve to keeping your head in the game. Obviously, I would never meddle into if somebody's actually having a problem that requires different kind of help. But I do like to consider always the bigger picture, because for example, the pointer number one, talking down to yourself, is something that you just have to consider, because it doesn't matter how many good tips you have, how many strategies you have, how many different kind of practices you do, and you have this custom made super plan how to practice, and you have all the technical tips handled so well. It's not gonna do much if you have some other problems that are kind of like blocking your development. So yeah, that's why I always consider all these aspects. And I also wanted to bring out this topic in a way because I've been in sports for a long time, and I've seen kind of like a firsthand what these things can do. Like it's sometimes like almost like watching a car crash in slow-mo, because you can really burn out yourself, especially if you're competitive, if you get too much into your feelings and you just get into this loop. So it can be a lot. And then of course, in my coaching, I use the word life happens, because I don't think we can ever look at just Lily has opinions. Because you really cannot just focus on giving tips and strategies, and you have to consider like, okay, do you have like, how much do you have a time to actually do? Like, what is your motivation level? What is your why? Why are you doing speed busting? Do you have the right reasons for this? All that, like almost like if somebody sleeps only 3 hours a night, it doesn't matter what what kind of tips they're using. Maybe their problem is actually that they're doing speed busting when they're supposed to be sleeping. So there's like no way. And also like sometimes you have something going on in your life that then affects your performance. So sometimes you just have to focus on life first. And I just always wish that mental health would be more considered in sports. And obviously, speedboxing is still not like a high-level sport in a way. We're not that super organized. But I just hope this would be taken into consideration, because a lot of these issues that I see happening with the high-level athletes back in the day could have been prevented, I feel like, so easily with just a little bit more support, a little bit more consideration. And maybe you have even read from the media when some famous athlete in your country has like completely burned out or stopped their career because it's just too much pressure. Because these things exist. Even if we think, and I agree, in a speedboxing community, there's a lot of positivity, but we cannot just ignore and think nothing will ever happen because we're positive vibes only. So I think it's just so much easier to prevent these issues. If I would build a coaching dream team, it would probably have coach, myself, probably somebody to balance me out as a good cop, like a Jim or Mario or something, a psychologist, you should definitely have one, and a physiotherapist. Because my shoulder is hurting so bad from the other day that I did 1,000 piece puzzle. But anyway, I don't want to go too deep into this topic. I know it's even some people it's a little bit uncomfortable. I just wanted to bring it up and give a couple pointers, and obviously I talked this a little bit more in detail in my coaching. So I just wanted to remind you all, take care of yourself first, and then let's take care of each other's. And see you next time. Bye bye.